All right, what's going on, Giants fans? It's Bobby Skinner talking Giants. Getting ready for training camp. The Giants are getting ready, and they're doing that by bringing in a couple vets. We got wide receiver Cole Beasley being signed and running back James Robinson. Make sure to like and subscribe. We're about to have a crazy amount of content coming out. We're going to be live streaming after every single practice. We're going to be going to Detroit for the joint practices. That should be fun. Podcast almost every single day. Maybe some film stuff too if I can get my hands on it. So make sure to subscribe. The preseason training camp is going to be a lot of stuff. But we'll start with Cole Beasley, who's 34 years old now. Played only 91 snaps last year between both the Bucs and the Bills when you include the playoffs. Had 10 catches, 103 yards, and 1 touchdown. So modest production for the amount of snaps he played. Like he had more yards per route run than Isaiah Hodgins did last year. Started with the Bucs in week 3 and week 4. Didn't really work out. Asked for his release because they weren't giving him the playing time that he envisioned when he joined there. Then the Bills signed him at the end of the year. The Bills kind of had a slot wide receiver where no one was really filling that role, filling that Cole Beasley role the way they wanted. Didn't get much run in the regular season. When the playoffs, he played a good amount. Like he played 30 snaps in both of their playoff games. Even had a touchdown in that Dolphins game. Had another like a 29-yard gain in that game. Only 4 catches, but still was a part of their offense. So last year, again, only had the 103 yards and touchdown. But the 3 years with Brian Daboll in Buffalo, he had 700 yards, 1,000 yards, 778 yards, and high, 82, and 67 catches, 11 touchdowns those 3 years. So very familiar with the Brian Daboll's offense in the slot. And he was the piece that kept the Bills on schedule. And they, like I said, they missed him greatly. The Cover One Bills guys that I follow, they talked about like, hey, that gap was very missing, was missed greatly. They weren't really able to find that role. He's been a really good separator on those short routes and those option routes in particular. And that's where he makes his money. And that's the kind of stuff that Brian Daboll likes to do. He's had a 75% catch rate the last 3 years, so he's been reliable. But he is 34 years old. Older, doesn't maybe have the same athleticism that he once had. And the Giants have a ton of slot wide receivers. But I want to talk about it. Sterling Shepard, very injury prone. But Sterling Shepard's played mostly on the outside recently in his career. He was playing on the out. Like Richie James was the slot wide receiver at the start of the season last year. Shep was on the outside. Paris Campbell, who I think I'm envisioning as the starter week 1. But he has inside flexibility. And then Wan'Dale's a slot-only guy coming off of the injury. And then Jamison Crowder. Cole Beasley, I still do think is a better player and fits better into this offense better than Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder was on the Bills last year, and Beasley was getting more run than him there. So if no one gets hurt, I wouldn't expect Beasley to make the roster. But with the injury issues on this team, maybe Wan'Dale and Shep both start on PUP. Cole Beasley could be someone that at least halfway through the season is a contributor. If those guys get hurt, hey, he spent an entire camp with them, and they can bring him back. So obviously, there's no risk on either of these moves, right? They're bringing them to be in camp bodies. But I do think Beasley has a little left in the tank. He's not the same guy that's going to put up, 82 catches and 900 yards. But I think he can be reliable if you need him for a game or two. And they also signed James Robinson, 25. He'll be 25 in a couple weeks. He's had a very tumultuous career in the NFL in only 3 years. Was an undrafted free agent in 2020. Had over 1,000 yards rushing, 1,400 scrimmage yards, and 10 touchdowns as a UDFA as a rookie. And was having another successful season in 2021, even under Urban Meyer, not as much. Tore his Achilles. Comes back from the torn Achilles, having modest success with the Jags. Then the Jets trade a 6th-round pick, conditional of a 5th-round pick due to playing time, for him. He goes to the Jets, and he looked really bad. I was talking with a Jets reporter about James Robinson. He's like, hey, he was just slow and out of shape, just really didn't fit in. But hey, he's coming off of a torn Achilles. You want to give the guy some grace. So the Patriots signed him in March on a 2-year, $8 million deal, but it was basically all incentives, nothing guaranteed. They signed him, and then they cut him in June in minicamp, which is around the time that you're doing physicals and stuff. So they must have not liked the physical shape that he was in, and especially with the money they offered him, obviously incentive based, they just decided to cut bait on that. So if you ask me which of the two has a better chance of contributing to the Giants this season, I would say Cole Beasley, despite all the other slot wide receivers, just because there's injury issues, and I think I know he fits this offense well. It's just how much juice does he have left, and the Buffalo Bills, thought he had enough juice left to give him 50% of the snaps in the playoffs. Obviously, they had their issues in the playoffs, but the Giants now have Matt Breida, Eric Gray. Those guys are going to make the roster, you would think. Jashawn Corbin and Gary Brightwell, as well as James Robinson, as their 5 running backs in camp. Obviously, this all swings on Saquon, right? Like, if Saquon doesn't, show up week 1, which I'm expecting to, I could see James Robinson making the roster. But I'll be at camp on Wednesday. Let's see. Well, how does James Robinson look? Is he in shape? Is he out of shape? Maybe the Patriots thing was a wake up call for him to get back on the right path of his career, because he's very talented. I mean, he was able to break tackles and have all that, success for a really struggling Jags team. So Giants are trying to add some pieces. They're making a run at it. Both these guys, you could probably bet on them not making the roster, but Cole Beasley can be a solid contributor for the Giants if called upon. It's just, is he going to be called upon above the guys that, the Paris Campbell, Shep, Wan'Dale Robinsons, and then James Robinson. I mean, maybe they end up liking James Robinson more so than Matt Breida. I don't really see that happening, especially with Eric Gray's play style and what Breida did for them last year, but we'll see. So appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week with podcasts, training camp, all that stuff. See you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.